Hello and welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. I'm Guillaume, your host, and each week I'm fortunate to share with you stories from climate tech founders, investors, and corporations sharing their unique insights into this fast-moving industry. Eventually, like me, you will learn, discover, and get inspired by those unique men and women who are contributing to the fight against climate change, and I hope it will help you to take a step in this formidable movement. So before we start, I just want to share a few words about us, as this podcast is just the tip of the iceberg of what we do at Startup Basecamp to support the climate tech movement. Our mission is to accelerate capital deployment towards climate tech founders, allowing them to focus on scaling their solutions. How do we do that? Every day, we help founders access to resources and connection and gain the visibility they need to expand their growth. We do this in a number of ways with a membership platform, a Slack group with a growing number of founders, investors, and experts from around the world. And recently, we went one step further with the matching services to connect founders with top climate tech investors. Keep in mind that we are able to do all of this thanks to the support of our listeners and our members. So please like and subscribe, share one episode with a friend, join a community, and if you haven't already done so, make a small donation to support our work. It really means the world to us. And now, enjoy the show! Hi everyone, in today's episode, join me to uncover the story of NoshBio, a visionary startup that is creating sustainability opportunities in the food industry. With groundbreaking innovation, fermentation technology, they are on a mission to make alternative proteins both available and desirable. This new podcast episode, I sat down with Tim Fronzek, co-founder and CEO of NoshBio. Whose journey is filled with bold entrepreneurship, sporting discipline, and a deep-rooted drive for environmental impact. Listen as he shares his path from athlete to CEO and how personal passion fuels his professional mission. We will also dive into the food industry's hefty environmental toll and learn about NoshBio fungi-based innovation impact. We also talk with Tim about the regulatory framework as well as the market incentives and limitations. Let's discover together a strategy to disturb the market and upcoming initiatives that could propel us into a new era of sustainable eating. Get an insider look at how they plan to bring delicious, eco-friendly options to plates worldwide, and tune in to be part of the conversation that could change the way we eat forever. In the second part of this show, Tim shares his previous fundraising experience and the importance of focusing on the rationales of the business model rather than solely focusing on revenues. Regarding work-life balance, Tim also shared with us how implementing some daily habits have significantly simplified his life. Tim, welcome to the show. Hi, Tim. Welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. I'm super happy to have you here with us today. I believe it's going to be a great opportunity to hear your story and learn more about this exciting adventure that you have with NoshBio, which is on the mission to enable and speed up sustainable transition from animal-based to animal-free diets by providing techno-functional ingredients, for alternative proteins products to improve their quality and increase the consumer's acceptance. So welcome to the show. Looks very exciting.
Thank you very much, Joe. I'm happy to be here. Thanks a lot.
So that's a tradition on the show. If you could give us a 30-second intro, a little bit more elaborate about the one that I gave you about NoshBio. Thank you.
Sure. NoshBio is a B2B startup that leverages natural fermentation and non-GMI fungi to produce highly functional food ingredients. As you correctly mentioned already, with a focus on animal-free products and trying to help those products to improve the quality profiles in terms of taste, texture, nutritional values, length of ingredients labels, and finally also the price.
Let's start from the top. In this show, we always like to first put the focus on the guest. So if you can maybe share with us a little bit more about your personal story and background. I mean, what are you passionate about? What do you love to do besides building NoshBio? I mean, what makes you feel inspired or your best self? As I always ask, who is Tim?
Yeah. So I would say what inspires me or what consumes most of my time besides the business is doing sports. So that's a huge part of my life, but also my family. I have two kids. I have a dog, married, a house, a garden. So that also consumes a lot of time. But beside that, I'm really kind of an entrepreneur by heart. So it's already the second bigger company that I've incorporated. So obviously, if you are an entrepreneur, start to run your own business, there is not too much time left and that you can spend on other things.
So, Tim, tell us a little bit more about your personal experience prior starting NoshBio. I mean, this work-life balance, and you mentioned yourself that you already, started a successful company prior the launch of NoshBio. So, maybe looking back at that journey in itself, do you have maybe one or two pieces of experience that you would like to share that, in a way, gave you an edge to start the company?
Yeah, of course. I mean, maybe first of all, I mentioned sports already. So before my entrepreneurial career, I was doing a sport not very popular, not very famous, not meant to earn money, but I did it professionally. So 4 days of training a week, a lot of traveling, also a lot of passion in it. And I think that kind of was a good training ground to become an entrepreneur, because from my experience, very often it is really about having this bite and really to overcome obstacles and tackle the challenges that you are faced with, which you can learn from my perspective pretty well if you do sports. And then when I studied business administration, so I'm having a business background. I studied business administration back in 2003. Two friends of mine who were sharing the same courses at the university were considering to start a business. And yeah, we just decided to join forces. So I supported them, and we started running an online retailer for pre-owned consumer electronics. And what really kind of what I remember quite well is when I think back. I mean, I'm having a business background, and I know that earning money with what you do is always part of the game. But already back then, we had this idea of extending product life cycles just in order to reduce the carbon footprint of mass consumption. And this was really kind of what drove us to build the company. And also, I mean, I was with that company for a bit more than 15 years to have this breath to really push it to the success that it now has. So the company is making 200 million in revenues, is profitable, employing 700 people. So it's really kind of a success story. And this impact was the main motivation for that. And I would say, for me, this is the perfect combination. On the one hand, yes, being an entrepreneur is something that really needs a lot of passion and also a lot of energy. But on the other hand, to know that you can have this impact and yeah, just sounds maybe a bit stupid, but just make the world a little better. That's really what for me is a lot of fun.
So before we start going into the detail about NoshBio, we'd like to zoom out and kind of understand the overall context that you guys are surfing on. And especially before the call, we decided to cover a bit more deeper the alternative protein industry today and its potential in terms of impact in the fight against climate change. So maybe to put things back into perspective, can you start by giving us the general contribution of the traditional, I would say, animal protein in itself in terms of GHG and impact on the environment to really kind of like frame the problem and try to understand with the different paths, like what are the solutions. So maybe let's start with some data point here if you have to share with us.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the food industry is one of the main contributors into global greenhouse gas emissions. And I have to admit that I was not 100% aware of that importance that the food industry is having in this problem. But we are talking about more than 30% of all greenhouse gases, which is coming from the food industry. I mean, obviously, including all the logistics and transportation systems, the feeding, industrial animal farming is a huge contributor. So the importance of the industry is really huge. And this is, I mean, when I realized how prominent the role of the food industry in that climate change game really is, for me, it was kind of an easy decision to take the decision to invest my entrepreneurial energy into that space. But also, from my perspective, what I do see, I mean, and you just mentioned the alternative protein space, I think if you take a deeper look into that, there has been, I don't know, 6 billion of equity being deployed in the space of alternative proteins over the last 5.5 years already. There's more than 1,000 teams, very smart teams working on their innovations. But if you take a look onto the question, how advanced are we already in providing mass market ready solutions to bring this impact into the industry, I think we are not even scratching the surface. Like taking the meat market, for example, and what is important, we are not only talking about meat, because almost in any food product there is animal-based ingredients included, no matter if it's beverages, if it's bakery, if it's convenience, confectionery, dairy. So you have it everywhere. But I think the meat market makes it most obvious. The meat industry is roughly 1.3 trillion US dollars big in revenues per year. And animal-free meat analogs doesn't even sum up to 10 billion. So we are talking about a market share that is not even a percentage big, which is just insignificantly small. So nonetheless, we have a lot of teams, a lot of smart teams again, and a lot of equity being deployed in this space. Obviously, we are quite far away from mass market ready solutions to bring this impact. And yeah, this was kind of the moment when we realized, okay, obviously the space needs some more help. And if you compare it also to other industries, renewables, mobility, real estate, I think the markets are more advanced in terms of bringing mass market ready solutions to the table that can really have an impact. But for the food industry, from my perspective, this is a little different. And this is what we are trying to tackle, and where we took the decision, okay, let's focus on that space.
Mm-hmm. So to go one step deeper in that understanding, I like to double click a little bit on the trying to understand today, and if you could maybe like share that with the audience a little bit, like the main difference in terms of plant-based protein technologies in use today. What is the market penetration that they represent, and some of their maybe advantages and limitation that you see. And after that, maybe let's speak about the upcoming innovation. So what is it in use today? Because I mean, you go into any grocery stores and you can see a lot of like different solution already in place. And what's the future? So let's start maybe with what is it today?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, there is a lot of solutions on the table. I think if you take a look on the whole food industry, maybe the dairy part needs to be treated a little different, because I think plant-based milks show bigger success in order to really tackle mass markets than in the most other verticals. I think we are talking about a market share of almost 10% already, so more successful than others, specifically for milk. But for the rest, yeah, I said, we are not even scratching the surface. And I mean, what can those products bring to the table? I mean, first of all, depending on which product, obviously, if it's plant-based, it's different from fermented products, or I mean, cultivated are not yet available on the market, but the carbon footprint is a little different, but definitely better than the conventional animal-based products, no matter which one you take a look at. But I think the challenge that those products have, and it's more or less for all of those, you can only build your products on the ingredients that are readily available. And if you do not want to use animal material, and if you want to produce animal-free products, you cannot. then you simply have a limitation on the ingredients you can build your product on. And those ingredients only allow you to bring the quality of the product to a certain level, but not further. So, which makes those products, and I changed my diet now 3.5 years ago by myself, so I know what I'm talking about. So those products typically do not taste as pleasant as their animal counterparts. If you have it in your mouth, like the whole mouth feel, the chewing experience, it's not comparable. It just feels a bit strange, a bit mushy, a bit, just awkward in a way, so not very pleasant. Then also nutritional values are not on par. So typically the protein content is significantly lower. Then also health aspects. So, I mean, you might consider, if you consume predominantly animal-free products, that you eat healthier, but it's not necessarily the case, because a lot of those products need to rely on chemical additives, which are not healthy at all. I mean, some of them might even be unhealthy. I mean, there are some studies going on. But I mean, some of them are at least not digestible. So they bring zero nutritional values to the table. You have those very long ingredients labels with a lot of E numbers on it typically. And if that would not be enough to make those products unappealing, you have to even pay a premium on top compared to the animal counterpart. So you get a product that doesn't taste as good, it's not as healthy as good, doesn't feel as good, and then you have to pay more for it. So I think that's the situation today from my perspective, with very little exceptions.
So looking at the near future and upcoming innovations, you said that you guys are seeing in the market. I mean, if you could share with us maybe some emerging technology and alternative to those animal based protein-based product in itself. I mean, do you see like some emerging categories there, or like type of technology that really are getting close to commercialization already in use? How is the future looking like?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, getting back to the plant-based products, as I said, I think there are some that are okayish in a way. I mean, not super pleasant, but those products typically have, let's say, within fermented plant-based and cultivated products, most likely the worst carbon footprint, because like, first of all, you also have to grow the crops somewhere, and you have all the carbon emissions that is attached to growing crops, the transportation as well, and then like the molecule structure of plant proteins typically do not have the same stability and the same length of their chain. So in order to replicate those meat-like fibrous structure, you have to run this high moisture extrusion technology on the plant proteins, which consumes a lot of energy and a lot of water as well. So therefore, the sustainability profile of those products is probably not the best one. Plus, I mean, we are also facing the problem that the capacity of the food system as we are building our food today kind of is limited. So there is only a given amount of land that you can use to grow your crops. But there is specifically fermentation from my perspective as a, let's say, technology, which also the idea of Nosh is based on, which is probably the most promising solution to create a food system that is less harmful for the planet, because it comes with a lot of advantages. Land requirement, water usage, carbon emissions, all of that is significantly reduced. And the technology is much closer to the go-to-market. I mean, there is already a lot of fermented food products in the market, also within meat analogs. I mean, corn from UK, or I mean, there is a lot of there's meaty in the US, so there is a lot of kind of fermented products already in the market. And then obviously there is cultivated, which is a little bit kind of this surprise package. So let's see how successful the scientists will be in really improving the efficiency of that technology. I mean, yes, I think it's interesting and it sounds fancy, but in the end, what does it help if you can grow an animal meat without having the animal, and with a better sustainability profile, if at the end it has a price that no one can afford? So that's a little bit the question mark from my perspective. Will it be possible to really optimize this fancy technology to a point where you find a price point that allows you to sell the product in the mass market? And then also, when will that be? I mean, if we have a solution that comes in 50 years from today, that's probably too late. So from my perspective, therefore, fermented products is probably one of the most promising solutions at the moment.
So now that we understand a bit better the problems and the limitation, as well as the potential alternatives that you just mentioned, I mean, to get a more complete understanding of the context, if you could maybe tell us a bit more about like who are the main actors in the market today? I mean, how is that market organized, and who are those existing like producers and developers? I mean, what are the in a way incentivization or incentives for them to work and collaborate, or eventually become customers of startups like yours?
Yeah, I mean, the market, I mean, the food market in general has a few giants and they more or less own the whole world of food products. At least in the conventional food products world. Within the alternative protein space, I think, as mentioned, there has been so many startups popping up, so many brands. If you enter the supermarket today and take a look into the animal-free shelf, you see, I don't know, 20 of different, at least in Germany. I mean, we're also a little bit in a bubble, and I'm living close to Berlin, which is even more bubble. But there you see a lot of different brands, and the selection is really huge. But I mean, typically those startups, I mean, you can characterize them. They are very small, and the products they launch typically all have the same problems. So therefore, it's really a question of how sustainable those companies will remain in the market, which is also, from my perspective, also a little bit a part of the problem. Because if, as a startup, you have your idea, then typically you get funded, and then you have investors who are pushing you on your go-to-market. So you need to show up with products fast. And in the end, if your product is really already appealing for end consumers or not, I would say sometimes that's the second decision that you have to make. You just need to push it on the market, and then you have products on the market that might not come with a perfect quality, and then consumers try those products, and they might come to the conclusion that it's a problem of animal-free products in general. Which is not the wrong conclusion at the moment, but yeah, it might be more difficult to convince them again to give new products that come with better qualities a second try. But besides those smaller startups, there is also a lot of really big companies starting to elaborate those alternative product lines by now. So you have huge companies, yeah, probably the more important customers, because for those companies you simply know they will also be in the market in 20 years from today. And I think that's the challenge, helping them to come up with really cool products.
So regarding a little bit about the regulation framework in place today, I mean, you guys are based in Germany. Maybe you have a larger view on the European level in itself. I mean, what are the regulations in place in a way that are like pushing or eventually slowing down the emerging of those type of product to market?
Yeah, I think it's not a German problem, but more a European problem, where you have the EFSA regulating and deciding more or less which products can be thrown on the market and which products not. And if your product is based on ingredients that have not been consumed before, I think it's May 1995 or something, then you are considered to be novel foods in Europe, and then you have to run through this novel food application process, which, I mean, I do understand that it's important that we kind of need to regulate which food products are thrown on the market, and we need to just make sure that consumers can rely on the products they can buy, that they are healthy, and it's not dangerous to consume those products. But just seeing how long this process takes. I mean, we have not yet run a novel food application process, but obviously we had a lot of conversations with different lawyers about it, also with different companies who are facing this process. So I think it's a huge effort, specifically for startups. You don't know when this process ends, so it might be a year, it might be 3 years, depending on how complex it will be. You don't know what your budget for this process will be. It might be 1 million, it might be 3. So it's really an almost uncalculatable risk. And specifically, if you are a startup and you rely on venture funding, this makes it really, really difficult, because you do not know when your market entry can be. So I think in the US it's definitely easier, but in Asia it's even easier. So I think it's a bit fragmented if you compare the different regions. But I would say Europe is probably, for a food startup, the most difficult and complex area to play in. And I mean, we talk about it later a little more in detail, but we decided consciously for a specific microbe to work with, because this microbe has already been consumed before 1995 and has already been accepted by EFSA to not to be novel, because we wanted to avoid this kind of difficult process and uncalculatable process. Yeah, so I think that definitely slows down and also blocks out some solutions. That's for sure.
So to close this section prior to jump into NoshBio, I mean, how are the consumer base seeing this risk of in a way Frankensteinization of the food industry, or the food that you're served on your table? I mean, you know, there's also those movement thinking like everything that comes from the ground is the way to go, and everything that is you know, processed and industrialized present maybe at short term or long term like risk for health in itself. So how do you guys see that, and what would you say to consumer that could be you know, afraid of this type of you know, alternative in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of get it if we are talking about those cultivated solutions, just to grow animal meats in the lab. I mean, that sounds a little strange. Also to myself, this sounds a little strange. I think it will take a bit of time before you get used to it. For other solutions, I mean, in the end, I think if consumers would put more effort in understanding what they are actually eating, and I mean, to be honest, like if you really dig a little deeper into industrial animal farming and what animal suffering in this circumstances mean, to be honest, you cannot eat meat. Like if you see that, I mean, that's from my perspective, it's hardly to kind of combine that with the ethical standards of the year 2023. And if you keep that, and people eat meat and they don't care. And I think that's just something you need to keep in mind. Like for all the other alternative protein products, I mean, insects, for example, I mean, I think just give it a try and try to get used to it. And fermented products, I mean, there is so many fermented products in the food industry available, but people simply do not know that those products have been fermented, like in cheese and dairy, in yogurt, in beverages. There is so many food products that have been fermented. People just don't know it. So it's nothing that should people scare away in a way.
So now let's go deeper into NoshBio. I mean, if you could maybe share with us like the story behind it. How did you guys meet with your co-founder? Which gap did you guys identify at first that led to the current version of the product of NoshBio? I mean, in a way, why did NoshBio have to exist?
Yeah. So after I left my previous company, beginning of 2020, I almost took a year off, just spent time with my kids, catched up a little bit of the quality time that typically comes a bit too short when you are a founder and an entrepreneur. And then end of 2020, I started to make my mind around what I could do next. And as already mentioned at the beginning, what drives me is to bring an impact. And so therefore, I consciously looked into ideas that can have an impact. And I discussed those with a friend of mine who is an active entrepreneur within the alternative protein space. So he's running together with a friend, a small company builder here in Berlin. It's called Avic. And like their business model is to identify scientific teams that come up with game-changing innovations, but that do not know how to kind of transfer their innovations into marketable products. And then they just combine those scientists with entrepreneurs. They also provide a bit of capital, support them in setting up the company. And this is how they are acting. And I discussed my ideas with him. And in the end, what he kind of said is, okay, Tim, I mean, all nice, but if you really want to have an impact, so why don't you enter food? And yeah, so after, as already mentioned, I understood how important the role of the food industry is. It was an easy decision. And then luckily they have been in touch with my co-founder, who is like Felipe Lino. He's really an outstanding scientist in the field of microbiology, fermentation, and microbes. So really one of the kind, I would say. And he had this idea of using fermentation as a platform system to decentralize the global protein production. And with that also make it more socially responsible, but also reduce the carbon footprint of it significantly. So we got introduced to each other, we met each other. And I mean, I had no clue from microbiology, fermentation, and those kind of technologies. So it was really kind of inspiring to hear this idea and what is possible also. But more importantly, he's also a super nice guy. So I know when you take the decision to start a company together, yes, it's important that kind of the hard skills are there, and it makes sense from a business perspective. But equally important, I would say, is that you share at least a comparable set of values. Because you spend so much time, you have to go through so much also intense times, and there it's just helpful if you're also a good match on a personal level. And that is absolutely the case for us. So we are close friends. We know each other now for a bit more than 3.5 years. So it's really a super nice time. And then we took the decision, okay, let's join our forces and create Nosh based on this initial idea, which we then shaped. We almost took a year before we then incorporated the company to really kind of shape the idea and bring it to what Nosh is about today.
So that's probably a good segue. I'd like to dive a little bit on the product side. I mean, if you can walk us through the process, how does it work? What type of microbe source are you using to produce, in which forms those proteins? I mean, for which application today? And why did you choose to develop those ones and go maybe select a few of them more than others? So if you could help the audience to visualize the process and understand in a way your secret sauce.
Yeah, and maybe while answering this question, I'd like to also dig a little bit deeper into the drilling process of identifying the right technology for what we wanted to do. So the first thing that we did was really trying to understand where we can have an impact and where we can really contribute in order to solve the problem that we identified. So again, back to this initial story, a lot of teams, a lot of money, a lot of products, but none of those products was really successful in tackling the mass markets. And the problems, as already summarized, is the quality of the product and the price, to sum it up like this. So we said, okay, instead of coming up with our own product that tries, like all the others, to solve those problems, why not trying to support all the existing products by bringing an ingredient to the market that helps solving those challenges of those products? As I said, you can only base your products on the readily available ingredients. So we said, okay, let's try to create this ingredient that solves the existing problems. So that was kind of the first decision that we made, also with the decision of becoming a B2B instead of a B2C company, because we had the feeling that the impact that we can bring is significantly higher with that route. And then the first thing that we were trying to do is, and again, this is a lot based on the knowledge of my co-founder, because like specifically at the very beginning, I had the feeling I'm not incorporating a company, I'm studying microbiology. So it was so much stuff that I had to learn. And we were talking about so many things I've never heard before. So it was really an intense time for myself as well. But the first thing that we tried was more or less to produce a collagen protein, like which is an animal protein that is typically used as a functional ingredient in many food applications. So it provides this kind of gelling or binding or thickening characteristics. So we thought, okay, maybe we can produce collagen in a precision fermentation process, which was like the overarching idea was changing the genetic codes of a yeast in a way that it is not producing its specific protein molecule anymore, but it is producing this animal kind of collagen protein. And I mean, first when I heard that, I thought, okay, I'm living in my own science fiction movie, to be honest. But then after, I don't know, 1 or 2 weeks of tweaking a little bit, I said, okay, let's just do a first business calculation. And then we just, on a sheet of paper, we summarized like all the criteria of the production process. And then in the end, I said, okay, maybe I got something wrong here, but we are ending up with a molecule that costs, I don't know, 1,000 euros per kilogram. And the actual price on the market is, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, 5 euros per kilogram. So what did I get wrong? And he said, no, you got everything right. And then I asked him, okay, what do you think? Like, being optimistic, what do you think? How much can we improve the efficiency of that production process? And below the line, we already saw after a week that it will be really, really tough, probably impossible to optimize this process and this technology to something that would allow us to produce those molecules at a price where we could find a price point to sell it in the food industry. So, and then we simply took the decision of saying, okay, no, then the technology doesn't seem to be right. So we need to have something else because we need to produce those kind of ingredients at a lower price. So, and then what he figured out is that this collagen protein, there are a few microbes that have the DNA that could allow them to produce a protein that is almost comparable to collagen, like the whole structure and the whole setup of this protein molecule would be almost the same than collagen. And then we said, okay, if that's the case, maybe we can simply produce those microbes and then try to extract those specific molecules. And if that's possible, then maybe those molecules could have comparable characteristics. So this was the initial idea then. And simply because your yields in those kind of production is significantly higher than in precision fermentation, because those microbes are producing their natural kind of protein. They just produce more. And also because you do not do any genetic engineering within the biomass, you do not end up with a lot of biomass that is GMO material, and therefore in the European Union can almost not be monetized. So then we realized, okay, this, if it was possible, could bring us to a unit economics profile that is attractive for the food industry. And then we just tried out. So it was then simply growing. We just picked a few of those filamentous fungi, and there again, the filter was kind of easy. We picked the ones that have this collagen-like genome in that domain. And that are not seen as novel in the EU, as easy as that. And like the first the first trials we did were already super successful. So we already observed that there is a lot of functionality in the biomass of those fungi. And from there, like over the last 1.5 years, it was really just a crazy ride because, and I know it's not typical for starting a business, but there was almost nothing that failed. So really, like within the last 18 months, the amount of failures that we had and like the number of things where we thought, okay, maybe it's working like this, and we figured out, no, it's not working like this, is really very limited. So, and yeah, so this is how we ended up with the idea with the fungi, and based on that, the last 1.5 years was really a crazy ride.
I'd like to double click a little bit on the fungi in itself. I mean, like, where and how do you source that in a way feedstock? Where, I mean, what is the logistics involved? And then I would say, like, you can like tell us a bit more about like your production chain today and upcoming one or in the future. How do you see it? I mean, like, what are the limitation constraints that you have there, and what's the output of it? Like, I mean, you mentioned that it's like very similar in terms of property and the collagen in itself. So it's definitely an ingredient that is used in many different industries. So in which form does it come out of your production chain? If I could summarize like that, is it on liquid form? Is it like a powder? How is it to transport that as well?
Yeah. So what is maybe important to mention, because this was also a change that we made, as mentioned, at the beginning, we were considering to extract this collagen-like molecule. But what we realized is that we do not even have to extract anything. Like, it's the whole biomass that we produce that provides this functionality and that can be used as ingredients. So which makes also or impacts also the sustainability profile of the production process significantly, because you do not end up with any kind of waste. You can really utilize everything you are producing. And how it comes out. So at the moment, we do have 2 different product lines. So the one product line comes out of the fermentation. It looks like a piece of chicken meat. It's wet. It's kind of moisty. It has this fibrous structure. And yeah, it looks comparable to a piece of meat. It is zero process. There is no extrusion required. And you can use this ingredient to create meat or fish analog products without the necessity to add any kind of functional additives. So it's really a single ingredient meat or fish analog. So there is only this naturally fermented mycoprotein, and that's the only ingredient that your product contains. From the texture, like, because fish and meat, and also within meat, obviously you have different kind of textures and structures. So like tuna is different to beef, but also chicken is different to pork. So and what is interesting, without changing the production process, so what we do is simply we play a little bit with the moisture content. So more or less water content within the material really changes the structure significantly, and you can replicate the structure and the denseness and the bite of the product from something that is as bitey as beef jerk, as this dried beef. Really, you can almost not chew it, but you can also have something that is as soft as tuna, with shorter fibers and less bite in it. So this is very interesting because it is super versatile. Obviously, taste-wise, it has a slight umami taste in this version. So if you want to replicate, I don't know, the taste of beef or the taste of tuna, you have to add some seasonings, but you do not have to add any chemical additives, any functional additives, no methyl cellulose, no binders, no stabilizers, no structuring agents. So it's really the plain mycoprotein, and that's it. That's the first line of product, and this is typically served fresh, or we can also dry the material to extend shelf life. And you can simply, by add a little bit of water or any moisture, you can bring it back into the fresh condition within seconds. So it's very easy, different from dried plant proteins. You don't have to leave it 30 minutes soaking, very quick. And then there is a second line of products, which we, I mean, this first line shows the magic of the material, because the magic of the material is really that it brings this functionality. You don't need any chemicals to add binding, stabilizing, gelling, whatever. It's all there. And we can just dry the material and then we grind it to a powder. And then you can use the powder in different applications. And this really opens us the whole field of the food industry. So we can act as thickening agents in dairy applications. We can be binding and stabilizing agents in vegan ice cream, for example, while at the same time, we are improving the measurements of the ice cream. So the melting point is increased by 50%. So it's significantly longer stable in room temperature. We can act in other confectionery products. We can be used in bakery applications, substituting eggs from the recipe. We can substitute eggs also in convenience products like sauces or mayonnaise. And at the same time, as the emulsification property of the material is just superior compared to the animal counterparts, you can reduce the amount of oil. For example, if you do a mayonnaise, you create a mayonnaise that is not only vegan, but also has a reduced fat content, which makes the mayonnaise just healthier. So this is the second line of product, which can really cater almost any vertical within the food industry.
That's super exciting. But you didn't tell me, like, what's the feedstock like? Do you cultivate your fungi in-house, or is that like raw materials or raw ingredients, or where do you source them to put them into production?
Yeah, so we are having the fungi on stock, so it's just living with us, like our pet. And what you simply do is you, when you produce, you take a bit of the fungi, you inoculate it into a liquid, like it's simply water. And then what you need to add is the carbon source. And there is different carbon sources that we can use. So for example, we can use starch-based medium. So for example, within the potato processing industry, the potato wash water, for example, contains a lot of potato starch. And the water at the moment is seen as dirt water. So it's a cost position, more or less, for the potato processing industry. We could use the water to feed our fungi and make high nutritional proteins out of it. But we can also use side streams from the brewing industry, so like malt extract. So there is a lot of side streams from the food industry that we can use. And there, again, as we are using the whole biomass and not a single target molecule, the quality of the outcome of our product doesn't really change by changing the feedstock. So it's a very robust fungi. It's just utilizing, and you can harvest no matter what you feed it. So this is another advantage, and again helps to reduce or improve the sustainability profile of the production process, because we can use raw materials that are seen as waste at the moment, and we can just feed the fungi with it and produce the highly nutritional proteins that you can use to come up with really cool animal-free products.
Right. Just last question, that production process, and thank you so much for uncovering that for the audience here. I like to understand, like, what is the quantity and the space necessary to produce, and in which quantity comes out, and in what's the length as well of that process today, and at scale, do you think it can be shortened, or is it still like a minimum of like days, hours, months that needs to be there for the necessary time to grow the fungi?
Yeah, I mean, we have just started to produce at industrial scale, which, when successful, we are able to produce at the moment up to 10 tons per week of material. So it's already production at scale. In terms of land requirements, let's say, in general, you can envisage the production process as the beer brewing process. So it's quite comparable. You use those large bioreactors, you add water, you add the carbon source, you add your fungi, and you need to do a proper aeration, because the fungi needs to have oxygen in order to grow. But that's the setup. And like the production that we are running. It was at the moment it's a 22,000 liter tank that we are running. And to harvest it, it takes roughly 3 days, so not more. So, and you end up with almost 700 kilogram of product. And the biggest potential probably that we see is to increase the titer, so to get more product, speed up the process. I think that's probably like that's limited, but 3 days is already fine. So you can run it, I don't know, twice a week or so. It's a good utilization of the infrastructure. Yeah, and we assume that we can, like, based on the experiments that we've run in the lab and the titers that we have observed in the lab, it should be possible to increase the titers by factor 3 almost. Which is a huge potential to reduce cost further. So at the moment we are producing already at roughly 10 euros per kilogram. So imagine you can triple your titer. So basically you cut your cost by 3 times. And this cost reflects working with the CMO. So there is also this intermediate margin in that price. And we already have our own production site secured. So we will start running our own fermentation capacity, 270,000 liters of total capacity, probably by mid of next year. And then again, you can probably cut your cost roughly by 40%, give or take. So we really see the potential to reduce the production cost of our ingredient to a level where it is competitive with animal proteins as well.
And right now, what's the green premium in a way, if you can call it like that, compared to the animal protein? It's like how comparable it is as of today. And you mentioned that you can get very close, but what's the reference today?
You mean in terms of carbon footprint?
No, not in terms of green premium, in terms of cost. Simply if you compare your product versus animal proteins, that could be used in the same application. What is the difference in terms of cost that you still have today?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a bit depending on which animal you take a look at. I mean, beef is the most expensive one, so we are already cheaper than beef. We are probably in the range of pork already. Chicken, there is still a way to go, so we are a bit more expensive than chicken at the moment, but it's completely realistic that we can also outcompete chicken in the near future. And then there is no other animal protein source from my perspective that is cheaper. So I think it's possible to become the cheapest protein source, which, I mean, the idea of Nosh is to make animal-free proteins to become the #1 protein source in human diet. So therefore we need to improve the quality, that's for sure, but we also need to reduce the cost and the price point because average households cannot afford to pay a premium on their day-to-day food product. So therefore that's absolutely the challenge that we need to face. And we are quite confident that we are able to achieve that.
So you mentioned a little bit about this financial aspect of it. I mean, can you tell us a bit more about your business model per se? I mean, are you guys, like you mentioned that you have your own factory in the making right now? Is that something that you see at scale, or would it be like licensing your recipe and your processes to other large manufacturer? What's your idea there?
I mean, at the moment we are still working towards the let's say the commercial proof of concept. So we have not yet sold products. So we are in different collaborations with potential customers at the moment, but we have not yet a final commercial collaboration ongoing. So we are not selling the ingredient, but I think this will change within the next 3 months, give or take, maybe a bit quicker even. And I mean, the moment we prove that we can produce mycoprotein at scale at a price point that allows us to sell it with positive contribution margins, plus knowing, and I mean, this is the feedbacks we receive from all the commercial collaborations ongoing, that the contribution into taste profile and texture profile of our ingredient compared to any other solution on the market, even the other mycoprotein solutions on the market, is really outstanding. Then it will really be about scaling, because I mean, then obviously you find the market, and to have an impact, then you need to really scale and serve the whole industry. And the idea is to scale our production capacity in-house. I mean, we have also IP rights secured around the production process itself. There's also a couple of IP right protections or patents filed regarding the final applications and the product and the fungi that we are using. So there is some protection included as well. So maybe licensing is also something that we would consider. It's not our top priority at the moment. At the moment, we are really following this approach to build up our own production capacities as well, because, and I think that's also something that is important to mention, alongside the whole product and technology, we also developed this concept that allows us to use existing food grade infrastructure for the production of our fungi. So the only reason why, I mean, we've just incorporated last year in February. The only reason why we can already say that we are running a 270,000 liter fermentation site on our own is because we can simply use an existing infrastructure. So we just rent this infrastructure. We haven't invested a single euro into CapEx at the moment. We need to do a few retrofittings of the existing infrastructure. So we need to invest a little bit, but it's not comparable to the CapEx intensiveness of typical fermentation projects. And that allows us also to scale significantly faster, because you do not have to build anything. You just use what is already there, invest a little bit of money, and then you are good to go. So, and this is the concept that we are following at the moment.
Yeah, definitely super interesting. In terms of, like, I mean, you mentioned pre-commercialization, utilizing like fungi that has already been used into the food system. So any regulation that you need to comply, or necessary certification to go to market, and how was I mean, in a way, those roadblocks there, how did you overcome them, or maybe you're in process to overcome them?
Yeah. I mean, regulatory-wise, luckily there is no novel foods or comparable processes that we have to run through. I mean, obviously you need to apply for a food producer, which we are doing, and then there is a few ISO standards that you need to be in line with at least. You need to have your HACCP systems installed in your production process, but also in your supply chain. So there, obviously, I mean, there is a lot of kind of quality measurements that you need to implement in order to meet the requirements of food security, food safety, and food quality regulations. But it is not this kind of comparable regulative process where you have to run a huge application. It's not comparable. It's smaller measurements that you need to implement, some documentation, SOPs that need to be in line. Also training of your staff. We just, like last week, the whole team did this. In Germany, it's called Red Card, which is kind of a qualification for dealing with foods. Those kind of things you need to do, but it has significantly less complexity than novel foods. And I would say it's not comparable.
Last question on my side. I mean, how do you compare Nosh to any other alternative in the market in terms of competition? I mean, how do you guys are different or better? How do you, if you could, give us a little bit an overview of the competitive landscape that you guys are playing into?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you definitely need to name the other mycoprotein players in the market, and specifically those who are also establishing themselves as B2B suppliers. So they are kind of following the same approach, let's say, because they serve the food industry with mycoprotein as an ingredient. The ones in Europe that I would name here is definitely Corn. I mean, also by far the most experienced company. I mean, they're already in the market for, I don't know, almost 20 years. Then we have Mycorrhiza. That is probably the ones that I would mention, and that also have comparable progress, I would say. So Enough and Corn already on the market. Mycorrhiza, I think not yet, but probably close to as well. So the difference compared to those companies is like, first, we are using a different fungi. So they are all using the same strain that corn started to work with, I don't know, 15 years ago or so. So all the patents from corn have expired. So that's why they could simply use the same strain and start working their process on the same strain, which maybe was an easy decision back in the days when they started their business, because you simply know it works because there is already someone who showcased that it works. But in the end, like the ingredients that you produce has the same characteristics, the same advantages, but also the same disadvantages. And therefore, we have quite some USPs compared. So first, the first thing that I would mention is the fiber length of Fusarium venenatum, which is this strain that corn uses, is measured in millimeters, while the fiber length of our strain can be up to 10, 20, 30 centimeters, which simply provides, without any extrusion or anything, like it's just the way it gets out of the fermenter. And if you want to do meat products, then obviously this is a huge plus, because you have this muscle-like fibrous structure in the product, and you do not have to kind of extend that by extrusion or anything. So that's a huge plus first. Then second, we have this functionality, which is also kind of unique with our fungi. So it has the binding, the gelling, the stabilizing, the structuring in itself. So you do not have to add anything. If you buy the corn products, for example, they are not vegan. They are only vegetarian because they have to use eggs to provide this gelling and structuring kind of characteristics. Also, the products from Enough, they are using carrageenan and other additives in order to bring the physical structure into their products, which we do not have to use. So this allows you to come up with products that have significantly shorter ingredient labels, but also it's cheaper because you do not have to add too many different ingredients. Also, there is no processing required, so we just take it out of the fermenter and it's ready to use, while the mycoprotein from corn and also from Enough, you have to do the steep freezing, and then you have to heat it up again in order to extend the fibers a little bit and stabilize the structure. That's not required for our product as well. And again, it improves the sustainability profile because you do not need the energy. And it reduces your process cost because the complexity of the production process is simply reduced. And then last but not least, as the most important use piece, we do not have any off taste. So which is also kind of unique in the mycoprotein world. And this is something that we know from different collaboration partners from us. They say if you work with Fusarium venenatum mycoprotein, typically when you go higher than 20% of inclusion rate, you start to work, you need to work with masking agents because you get this bitter taste, this off note. And with us, it's really, you can create 100% a product with 100% inclusion rate. So there is nothing in it, only our mycoprotein. And still the product has a very pleasant taste. So this is the main advantages that I do see.
Fantastic, very exciting. Sounds that a lot of cool stuff are happening. So what's next for NoshBio? I mean, what are the steps for you guys to scale?
I mean, we've just successfully reached industrial scale. So this was a big check mark that we wanted to have. We are at the moment working on the onboarding of our first customers. This will happen within the next 3 months. So most likely within Q1 next year, there will be the first products in the market, at least in Germany, that are based on Nosh's mycoprotein. Once this has happened, the next big thing on our list is the next fundraising. So we closed our seed round early this year. We are planning to start our Series A fundraising process then probably mid to end of Q1 next year to raise the funds to then really scale further. And scaling further also means to start considering internationalization and onboard the next production sites.
Very exciting. So More on the personal note, is something that I always ask to my guests here. I mean, what would you say to people who feel demoralized by all the already visible consequences of climate change? Are we doomed?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from time to time, I'm also a little scared about it, to be honest. But I think, I mean, from my perspective, complaining doesn't help. So it's about proactivity and try to take measurements. And obviously, not everyone can become an entrepreneur, or not everyone should become an impact entrepreneur properly. But I mean, I think remain positive and be proactive. Try to adopt your own behavior. I think that yeah, satisfies, at least myself, satisfies a lot. So, for example, I'm really trying to avoid planes. We had a business trip earlier this year to South France, so we took a 19 hours train ride to get there. I can just say, yes, it's painful when you are on the train, but when you reach your destination, it just feels good because you didn't or you didn't fall into the trap of using the plane just for your own convenience reasons. And yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't help to complain. We need to try to act, find countermeasures, reflect our own behaviors, yeah, and just work towards a more sustainable society. That's the only way.
Any things that people listening to the show, founders, experts, investors can do to help you?
I mean, reflect your own diets, definitely. That helps. And I mean, if you are interested, I mean, as said, we are starting our fundraising next year. I mean, for all the specifically investors that really want to have an impact and want to just help to enable this transition from animal-based to animal-free diets, let's get in touch. Let's talk. It's like the filter that we have for the fundraising is really mission alignment on number one, and then on second is business ethics. And yeah, so always happy to get in touch with cool people that sharing comparable sets of values and are on the same mission that we are. Yeah, happy to connect.
Any question that I should have asked that I didn't for this first part of the show?
No, I think you tackled quite a lot, I would say. So maybe what we haven't talked about is the more strategic view of Nosh, and I just want to give a sneak preview. I mean, all we do is already quite some cool stuff, but we have just recently started the collaboration with Ginkgo Bioworks, which is about creating our next strain of fungi. This one will be novel, so we are working on something really cool that can not only replicate the texture of meats, and here specifically, I mean, for all the white meat application, we are kind of well prepared with the existing strain that we are using in terms of taste as well. It has this slight umami taste, but when it comes to red meat, you have this iron-like bloody taste, which is difficult to replicate at the moment, but we are working on some really cool stuff to tackle that as well in the near future.
Very exciting. I can't wait to hear more about it. Thank you so much, Tim, for your time, your incredible insight, this amazing work that you guys are doing with NoshBio for a healthier and a better world and cleaner world. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks a lot for having me. It was a huge pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again for joining us on the Tech for Climate podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. Stay tuned next week for more climate tech insights. In the meantime, head on over to our webpage at startupbasecamp.org, where we have lots more insights and resources for anyone wanting to get involved in climate tech. If you find our resources useful, please consider donating to support our small self-funded team. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends, and see you next time.